Of the scenes or the stunts you were legally allowed to do, what would have been your favourite stunt?
Yeah, my favourite stunt was one that I didn't know I was going to be able to do. I'd watched my stunt double do it, Mana Davis, who was absolutely brilliant. And it was the scene where, it was actually an additional scene, we did it in pickups, when we're on the mountain when the stone giants are fighting, and Bilbo falls off the side, and then Thorin climbs down and then falls. And we were doing it on a wire, and Mana came to me and said, I think you can do this. And I was like, okay, if you think I can do it, then I'll do it. So yeah, just getting on a wire and doing something that your stunt double has already shot is thrilling. But, you know, I love doing as many of the stunts as possible, not because it gives you a sense of heroicism, but it makes you really feel like you're playing the character. If you get to do everything that the character does, it's just very satisfying.
Who would win in a cage fight, Thorin or Dwalin? And also, would you ever consider coming to Melbourne for a convention?
Yeah, of course I'll come to Melbourne for a convention. As to the cage fight, you mean Dwalin and Thorin in a cage together?
In a cage fight against each other, who would win?
I know that you're a method actor and you immerse yourself in a character and research beforehand. Was that easier or harder with makeup and green screens where a lot of it wasn't there already?
It was kind of essential, actually. A lot of the discomfort with the costume and the prosthetic was alleviated by just staying focused on the character. But also the way Pete works is sometimes he'll just call on you with half a minute to prepare, and you have to dive straight into something. So it was really hard to take my mind off things and you know, engage too much. Although Dwalin and I did have a lot of games of table tennis on G stage. But apart from that, but I was in character. Yeah.
Hi, Richard. You've played a lot of sort of dark, brooding, grumpy characters. I wondered what your experience is, if you can comment on sort of casting to type, and whether you're looking forward to choosing some different sorts of roles in the future.
It's a very good question. I always get very nervous when I read something that feels close to myself, because I predict that I won't get it, because I'm sort of better at being somebody that's very far away from myself, I think. But of course, I fantasize about playing, you know, the romantic lead and the heroic character. I just don't think my face suits that. I think that there's something dark and malevolent about me. So yeah, there you go. Was that agreement?
I think you're right. You do look inherently evil.
I
do. We all know that Peter Jackson was an absolute groundbreaker in technology when it came to Lord of the Rings. Were you expecting the level of groundbreaking technology that he included, like the red cameras and the HFR and the extra 3D technology that he was actually shooting live with?
You know, when you're shooting it, you're really not aware of any kind of technological differences between the cameras, apart from the fact that with digital you can do what's called a rolling reset, which is, I think, something Peter just uses himself, whereby you don't cut camera, you just keep going and you go again immediately. And for an actor, that's an absolute gift, because you don't have time to think about it or overthink it or self-note or overanalyze. So it's very freeing. The only thing that was a struggle and a challenge was to get the scale issue right. He developed a technique called slave motion control, where some actors are in a green room, some are on a scale set, and the two cameras are coordinated. So often, I think I had one scene in the second movie, which we're not allowed to talk about, whereby there were 300 people on set, and I was alone in a green room with 25 eye lines, little crosses on the wall. But again, you try to fire up your imagination, you go back onto the main set, you rehearse again, and you take that feeling away with you and you just shoot immediately. So yeah, lots of challenges.
What was it like filming scene 88, I think it was, the warg chase? We heard from Dean, Stephen and Graham that it was really full on. What was it like for you?
They're just weak. Scene 88 was a chase sequence, and it felt like we ran throughout the whole of the North and the South Islands. But, you know, it was so great to be out in those incredible locations. Places that I've never seen in my life and probably never will again. But I do remember every day strapping up my ankles with tape because the ground was so uneven that you could really twist your ankle. And obviously, you can't have limping Thorin at the front of scene 88, can you? So, no, it was a challenge.
Now, Richard, Andy Serkis's work has been groundbreaking, and he got to work with Martin Freeman. But there's another character who I can imagine you wouldn't think would be working in a mocap situation. And it's the character played by Benedict Cumberbatch. And a thought hit me that it's quite possible that Peter Jackson would get Smaug and you in the room together. And I'm just wondering whether that's happened or whether you've actually talked about it.
That's a real spoiler. I went into the motion capture studio because I wanted to see how Benedict worked. I'm a huge fan of his. I love the fact that they've cast him because it means that the dragon has an incredible intellect and an incredible voice. I also think that they maybe are going to use certain aspects of his bone structure in the face of the dragon, but nobody knows yet. But I don't know if Thorin and Smaug ever come face to face. That's something I'll find out when we go back to do reshoots. I hope so.
And finally, I'd like to, something that's been touched on with a few questions, but I think it's summed up in the fact that you worked at the appendices and you went back to the original material and you were influenced by Tolkien, and many fans here were inspired by Tolkien, and now seeing it come to life is one thing. But I'm wondering, what would you ask him about your character and this story, if you could?
The one thing that I would want to know, and it's something that, again, I tried to fill in my little biography, was who was the love of his life. Because I felt that he's sacrificed his life, or he's given up something for his people, for his quest. And I did imagine that there might have been, a princess that he would have been betrothed to as king under the mountain. So that's probably what I would ask Tolkien. I know. Are you welling up?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that sums it up. Richard Armitage in a nutshell, a class act. Please put your hands together for an actor and a man who's brought Tolkien to life.
One of the biggest moments was when we all put our gear on and we all stood together, sort of looking around at each other into the characters' faces. To stand in a circle and look at the guys that were going on the quest, I got a real tingle up my spine.